Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Howdy. How are you?
Hello. Hey, Dave. Hi. I'm doing great.
That's good. That's good to hear. And hi, everybody.
How are you doing?
You know, I'm great.
Welcome, weary adventurers. In some kind of horseshit.
Sure. Listen, my name is David Bell.
My name is Tom Ryman.
And we just watched Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves.
Betwixt Thieves.
Thieves.
As a little kid, I always wanted to say Dungeons and Dragions. Like, does your brain ever try to make you say that, or am I the only one?
No, you're the only one.
All right.
We're thieves, but we help the wrong person steal the wrong thing and unleash the greatest evil the world has ever known.
The Red Wizards created an army of the undead.
Sounds lovely.
Quite the opposite.
I know, I was being ironic.
I find irony is a blade that cuts he who wields it most especially.
You're not a lot of fun, are you?
Oh my goodness, folks.
This is my goodness.
Yeah. This is out this, the weekend. It is doing okay at the box office.
Yeah.
It is a Dungeons and Dragons movie directed by two people. What did they do?
Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly. They did a game night. Well, they wrote Game Night anyway.
And Vacation.
And of course, John Francis Daly was on Freaks and Geeks.
Right. And it looks like some writing for Spider-Man, it looks like, too. That's interesting. I didn't know that. And so, this is like a adventure Dungeons and Dragons movie. It's, it's clearly trying to start a new brand, right?
Yeah, this is clearly trying to start a whole franchise. Like, I know that they greenlit a spin-off series that'll be coming to Paramount Plus. Their plan is to make more. Oh,
really?
Yeah. Their plan is to make more movies. I think they'll probably... You can tell watching this, like, Dungeons & Dragons is a big world, so obviously this is kind of like their core characters, I guess. But, you know, they could do a number of... It could be just like Marvel, in the sense that they could do a number of different movies that focus on different characters and different parts of the Dungeons & Dragons world, so... Yeah, this is clearly meant to kick off like a Marvel Cinematic Universe of sorts, like a big franchise.
Right. It's very easy to make this a cinematic universe because that's what Dungeons and Dragons.
That's what Dungeons and Dragons is. Yeah,
it's very bold of them to already do a spin-off series when they've only done one movie. They should focus on the movie first, but I guess let's start off by asking that question. Tom, how did you like this?
I actually liked this a lot.
Me too.
I thought it was really charming and funny. And you, even though I just wanted to say real quick, you can feel the Marvelness in there, but it's like the comedy is much better written than a typical Marvel movie. So even though it has a similar kind of, playful tone, it still knows when to be serious and the jokes are sharper, and it's really charming and fun. I really enjoyed it.
You can feel the Marvelness in, we should say, the humor, but I wouldn't say in the general tone. And I would say it's... I really enjoyed this. I'm not against the spin-off series.
No, not
I'm
at
just
all.
like, come on, guys, take it easy. Take your time here. Make a sequel to this. Because I want to see a fucking sequel to this, because I enjoyed this.
I want to see 18 of these. All different kinds of Dungeons & Dragons movies.
Yeah, so did all the little there's a bunch of little dirtbags and like little kids in my theater. And they loved it. Like 6-year-olds, 6 to 8s.
Little scoundrels.
Yeah, little scumbags. And they enjoyed it. And that made me happy because I was like, oh, good. It's not just me, like an adult man in this theater enjoying this stupid movie, like people, families, kids of all ages, etc. So that made me happy. And this was generally just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
In a movie that is competently structured and written, that's the other thing is, I hate that the bar's this low, but this is not nonsense. It's pretty straightforward in that, but it's also pretty fun in the way it tells the story and does stuff. It felt like a D&D campaign as well to me.
Oh yeah. Like they have to stop and do a number of, like the quest from the beginning is clear. Oh, they have to break into this castle. We're going to spoil this movie, by the way, because we always do.
Yeah.
They have to break into this castle to thwart Hugh Grant, who has betrayed them, who was once a friend, now a foe, and is raising Chris Pine's daughter because he got them all sent to prison. So they got to break into the palace in Neverwinter and get Chris Pine's kid back, and also this little stone tablet that can bring Chris Pine's wife back to life. But they have to do a number of side quests first. Like they have to form a team. They have to find some helmet. And to find the helmet, they have to do another side quest. And it's like you can feel the side quests in it, but it never feels meandering.
No, because it is absolutely meandering in that it's like, oh, go get this to get this to get this. But again, so what it is it's. I don't know if I'm being more forgiving of this because it's D&D, but that's part of why it felt like D&D. It also felt like when we talked about the humor, the characters like not quite taking everything that seriously. Like that's what we're talking about, right? With the Marvel humor is like something dangerous happens and then the character says a joke.
Right. But it's not exactly that though. And I did think it was interesting that true to like this obviously was written by D&D fans, people who are really into Dungeons and Dragons. Yes. So the two characters, like the druid, the wild-shaped druid, and the paladin, who are serious character. It's a serious class type in the game. Both of those characters are relatively serious, but they find a way to make the paladin funny because he's almost a little kind of like Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy, where he just takes.
Yeah, the paladin's incredible.
The paladin was so cool.
Lawful good.
Yeah, it's extremely. He's so lawful good that he won't come with them to break into the palace, which I was a little disappointed about because I thought he was so cool.
Well, they had to nerf them a little bit
because he was so good. Powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess what it is that like it's so there's the meta aspect where I'm watching it, I'm imagining people playing D&D, which you probably shouldn't do that judging this movie. But there's stuff where it's like there's critical fails that happen.
Yeah.
There's plans that they do that are very funny. That's the kind of bullshit that someone would think up.
Yeah, the hither spell. When the whole scheme to put the portal on a piece of treasure and get that inside the treasure vault, that first of all was really, really clever and was a great fun sequence. I really liked that. And second, it does feel like something that like a group of D&D players would sit there. It's like, okay, we're not strong enough to break through this magic seal. How the hell can we get inside this room and come up with something weirdly convoluted like that the DM has to roll with? Like I totally understand what you're saying, but I felt that in a good way watching the movie. Like, oh, I can feel like every time Michelle Rodriguez beats the shit out of people, all I could think of was playing D&D with you specifically, Dave.
Yeah, exactly. It's
shoving that guy into the forge. I was like, oh, that's a Dave move.
It works really well. And like I hate to compare this to Marvel, but it's gonna be compared to Marvel because that's the other big blockbusters that happen. But I want to kind of break down what makes this, in my mind, way superior as a fun blockbuster. Because the other thing this doesn't have is, well, it does. It's sad when it needs to be sad. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have the characters like joke during those scenes.
Right. It knows when to be serious.
Yes.
Like when to let an emotional scene play.
Yeah, which I would argue Marvel still does as well.
Sometimes. It depends on the movie. It really depends on the movie. It depends on the movie.
But this is mostly fun. And then there's the... it's kind of a heist film. So like you're saying, it's kind of clever. And what it also comes down to is like, it's the action. There are scenes, right? Like you mentioned Michelle Rodriguez. There's the ending scene where they're all fighting. but they do it in a way that's like clever. And it helps that like because of the way a D&D campaign works, Chris Pine, for example, useless in a fight. That's the whole idea.
Kind of. He's good at...
He throws down a little bit, but
Yeah.
he's like sucker punches a lot.
I do show that I do like that they show him doing like a bard spell. Like when he is distracting the guards, I was thinking, he's being the bard right now. And there's one point where he gets everybody kind of like when Michelle Rodriguez visits her ex-husband, halfling Bradley Cooper. Tiny little Bradley Cooper. Incredible cameo. Because it took me like a minute before I realized it was him.
Because he's not playing it like a Bradley Cooper role.
No, he's not. He's playing it very. It's like
a hobbit. He's a fucking hobbit.
It's a very sweet and kind of heartbreaking scene because he's like this really nice guy, and I don't know. It's just a very sweet scene, and he basically explains that. Michelle Rodriguez got kicked out of her barbarian clan because she fell in love with this halfling man, and they tried to make a life together, but she was always gone because she couldn't get over the fact that she had left her clan or had been kicked out of her clan. So it ends up being this, it's funny because it's tiny little Bradley Cooper, but it's like a genuinely emotional scene. Anyway, at the end of that scene, Chris Pine cheers up the party by playing a song. I'm like, oh, he's doing bard shit.
Yeah, he's doing bard shit. That's what it is.
Right, is he's pretty useless when fights break out.
Yeah, my fear going into this movie, and I was excited going into it, and I kind of expected it to be good, but I was, in my mind, the way it could not be good is if they did the Marvel thing and like kind of like that Adam Project movie where everybody fought like a superhero. Yeah. I was waiting for that shit. And instead they used the strength of the way Dungeons and Dragons work, where it's like, you have a bard, you have a wizard, you have a barbarian, and they all have different strengths and weaknesses, and they're actually playing with that so that the characters aren't it's clever. I think some of the What's that?
I was just going to say real quick, to be perfectly honest, like that must have been really fun for the writers
100%.
To be able to sit there and it's like, okay, because Dungeons and Dragons is a game with so many source books and so much rules about how each class works and what powers they have. Like that must have been really fun to look through it and be like, oh shit, this character can do this in the game. That would look pretty sweet in a movie. Let's do that.
Right. And it's just generally fun to play with these ideas, right? Like I think that's why people talked about the first two Ant-Mans versus the third, which pretty much bombed the third Ant-Man. I mean, I think it didn't break 500 million or something.
It made it didn't make as much money as it was clearly intended to, and they had a huge like week 2 drop off.
And one of the big things people point out is that the first two Ant-Mans have a lot of fun with the shrinking environment, and the third one just doesn't have that. And so there's like the better Marvel movies tend to be clever, right, in the way they do things. Whereas you watch and I don't mind Civil War, but it's like, just people fucking fighting each other.
Right. Just real quick, that's like the fun part, I would think, or at least one of the fun things about writing a superhero movie, and this is not dissimilar, Dungeons and Dragons, is what I just described, like sitting down, okay, Cyclops can shoot a laser out of his face. Like what's a fun way we can play with that? Yeah.
Right. And like I feel like things get you can tell they lost their passion when it's just like, and they fight. And we talked about this sort of in the John Wick review, which is like, if you don't have like real stunts to offer, and this movie actually did, Dungeons and Dragons.
I was impressed with the choreography. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, what do you do? And you have to be clever if you're going to do a CGI wizard battle or something. So, for example, in this, the wizard fights the evil wizard, and they both form big hands.
That's a real spell.
The hands are fighting each other. Of course it is. Yeah. And that's a lot of fun to watch. And then, like, the hands interact with them. Like, he gets thrown and his hand catches him.
Yeah. It's such a good fight.
It is. And it's just CGI bullshit, but it's good because it's like, what a clever idea.
Yeah, and they find little games to play, to keep you engaged in it. And the people are always there, too. It's not like a CGI Iron Man. It's still like Justice Smith standing there having to cast spells. I was just going to say, it was fun watching this with Marina, because every time they would mention something or do some kind of spell or some kind of creature, she'd lean over to me like, that's from the game, it's this.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. She
Fucking
knows
nerd.
it. She knows it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
She lost her mind when they said they were going to go to Baldur's Gate because it's one of her
I
favorite
know.
game series.
And they talked about Waterdeep as well.
They sure did, Dave. One of the lords of Waterdeep was at the Sun
Yes.
Games, and he got turned into a corpse with red mist.
Fuck yeah. I want to talk about the red mist. That's another example of okay, so they are still just doing the thing. And what I mean by doing the thing is like blue light in the sky, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
With this evil wizard. Evil wizard wants to do the thing. But they at least made it more visually interesting, where all these veins come out and this cool red mist, and they turn into weird goblins. And that's what I mean, where it's like you're still technically doing the thing, but you're doing it in a way where you're actually thinking about like, how do I make this look different?
Right. And
people have.
Go ahead.
Oh, it's just like everybody's seen a dragon. Have they seen a chubby dragon?
Have they seen the fucking tubby dragon, Dave?
Incredible.
I want to get back to Tubby Dragon in a second, but I just wanted to say that the way this blue light in the sky in this movie is smaller stakes. It's not like a global threat. It's just the threat is threatening the people in this arena. So it reminded me more of like the ending of Batman. Like Joker's ultimate plan is to gas everyone at this parade.
Right.
And that's basically...
Smaller stakes is a big deal as well, yes.
Yeah, because you can see it. Yeah. It's so I likened it more to that, which is still, the same blue light in the sky type threat, but it feels less. It's always better for me when it's less vague and less like you start to get your eyes start to glaze over, particularly in the Marvel movies, where every new threat is this universal cosmic like planetary threat that's going to destroy the whole world with a laser beam from the sky or something like that.
Absolutely. And when everybody's just has the same amount of power. Like we talked about this before with like when Doctor Strange fights Scarlet Witch, there's some interesting shit there. I mean, Doctor Strange can do some really cool shit. That first movie was really fun for that reason. But when they stop kind of thinking about it with care, it gets to this point where I'm like, I don't even know who's more powerful than who. Like I don't even know what it matters. Like when two like big characters or two Iron Men or whatever are going at it, where it just feels very samey. Whereas like this is a sorcerer battle where they do certain things with it. Like I said, the hand stuff, where it's the point being that it's all the same shit. But it's supposed to be. It's a blockbuster movie for all ages about good versus evil.
It can be done better is what I think we're both circling.
That's kind of what we're saying.
Yeah.
And it's not, I don't want to say it's a superhero movie because it's every movie. Star Wars is this. Fantasy films have always been this.
Willow, it's doing all the things that PG-13 action adventure blockbusters try to do.
Yeah, and have been doing since the fucking forever.
Since the 80s.
And so like the most recent and most obvious comparison is that superhero films also try to do this. It's just nice to watch it done in a way that just feels generally more fun and kept my interest. I will say
I just wanted to say real quick, it had that kind of weirdness factor too. Like it's fun not being as familiar with the Dungeons and Dragons world, even though I've played it since I was a kid. I've only ever read a couple of source books, so there's vast amounts of this universe that I don't know anything about. So it was fun to just like see like the Jarnathan, the fucking Eagle Man. Like it was funny to just see Eagle Men show up, and like when the paladin pulls a baby cat person out of this giant fish's mouth and hands it to grateful cat mom person.
That's the other thing.
I just wanted to finish the thought. It's able to do like the Mos Eisley Cantina thing, where it can surprise you by reminding you that, I still don't really know what the limits of this world are.
Yes, and it feels fresh.
In a fun way. Yes, and it feels fresh. Yeah. Sorry.
And like, if you make 20 of these, yes, it'll start getting less fresh.
Right.
But right now, it's like it doesn't feel like they're just trying to do Marvel, because they are, like we're saying, like they have a source material. And they're like, we've talked about this in the past, which is like when everybody wanted to be the next Harry Potter, they made like Percy Jackson. And it was like, no, you don't understand what it means to be the next Harry Potter, until Marvel came around. and Marvel became technically the next Harry Potter. What they really mean is the next thing that makes a lot of money.
The next biggest thing in the industry.
That you can make 20 films of.
Yeah.
Which I would argue that general model is a problem that is new. You know, like, we've always made sequels, but like in the 90s, we didn't make 1,000 Jurassic Park movies. We just kept making different blockbusters.
And there's a promise that Star Wars and Marvel haven't delivered on, which is like, this is such a vast universe, we can tell any number of stories about any number of different characters. Yeah. But Star Wars and Marvel just seem to keep telling the same stories about the same characters.
Right.
So,
and
hopefully, with something like Dungeons and Dragons, which is a little less bespoke, because it really is, there's a lot of like lore and facts and stuff about the universe, but the whole point of Dungeons and Dragons is to be a sandbox for people to make up stories within.
Right.
So hopefully they recognize that as they continue to... obviously, the makers of this film understood that.
Right. More than any of the other source material, this is a good one for that.
Yeah.
And so, like, talking about
what
that
it's
idea...
designed for.
Yeah, I'm not sure studios should strive to be the next Marvel or next Harry Potter. I really don't think that's a good way to make movies. But if you are striving to do that, this is how you do that, which is that this is taking... It's not trying to literally be Marvel. It is taking another new universe and having fun with it in a charming way that will hopefully attract people to it. Because it does feel like a different world. The rules are madness, like it's gobbledygook, because it's like a wizard can basically just be like, I'm not powerful enough for that. Or like, here's this thing traps so you can't do magic, right? So the writers can just make up whatever shit they want. But I think what makes up for that, personally...
It never feels like that. Even though that is what they're doing. Like, it all, like the magic blocking bracelets that they put on Justice Smith and Sophia Lillis. Like, it's like, that's, that's the writer just being like, oh, you can just come up with whatever. But, like, I know those items exist within Dungeons & Dragons. So, I don't know. I didn't see the writing in those moments. Like, it felt like organically part of the same world. Like, it never felt like a cheat to me.
I didn't feel it at the time. It's just, it's still like, it's all nonsense, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how do we do this? Oh, I can, like they do that joke where they're like, can't you just magic this? Can't you just magic that? And he's like, people don't understand magic. And then they're like, what about this? And he's like, I actually can magic that. Or they know it's nonsense.
Yeah.
And they know they can just sort of like take things back or change things, but it's the story is well crafted enough that it's not copping out based on that idea. But what I wanted to say is the fact that also there's a bunch of character, like, I think what makes it work for me is the limitations of each character more than anything.
Yeah.
Like, you look at Marvel and it's like, okay, Iron Man isn't magic, right? And so, like, over there you got Doctor Strange, and he can pretty much do anything through magic. But Iron Man, he's not magic, so he shouldn't have those rules. Except he's got, like, nanobots, and, like, he'll just, like, make a shield appear, or, like, get sudden rockets, or, like, have a different weapon. And it's, like, it still doesn't feel like there's rules. You know what I mean? Where it's, like, everybody's kind of magic in that world at a certain point, because the technology is also magic, because we don't really feel like we know what anybody can necessarily do. Whereas here, like Chris Pine, it's like him versus a wizard is just not going to work out.
Right.
Michelle Rodriguez, like, specifically does, sword stuff, axe stuff.
Right.
Like, so there's still a structure to the characters. The one that's, like, probably the most difficult is the, what's her name, who can transform?
Yeah, Sophia Lillis, I forget her. Doric, I think, is her name in the movie.
Yeah. That's a tough one because it's like there's so many parts where I was thinking, like, she could probably transform here and do something. So they have to kind of, like, that's going to be a tough one to write around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they do pretty good with it.
They do they always come up with different situations where it's, like, it doesn't always make sense for her to, like, owlbear out, for instance.
Right.
But But I do
They
like...
did good with it this time, yeah.
Yeah, I really liked the chase when she has to transform into like 5 different animals.
Yeah, that fake oneer that was really fun.
That was so
where
fun.
she's like a mouse and then goes into a knight's outfit and like keeps changing. That was great.
Yeah,
they're having a lot of fucking fun. Again, that's the sort of thing where what we're watching is all fucking CGI, but it's clever.
Yeah,
it's fun to watch. And so like, it's just nice to see something where it's like everybody's sort of invigorated. They like this world. They want to play with it, and they started pretty small scale, and it's just nice to see people who are enjoying themselves making a movie, right?
Yeah.
And so like
everybody have fun out there. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, really, seriously, and it's also kind of creepy. They do hint at like fucking Thanos in this, where she's talking to that weird skull dude.
Oh yeah, I assume that was like the Sand Taz or whatever, that the main red mage. But there's a lot of like super evil shit in D&D that they can play with.
But they're definitely doing that, right? And that's the one thing that I wish they wouldn't, but I know they're gonna, which is like, I wish every movie was a different adventure. Like I don't want a Thanos. I just want like multiple just adventures. Is that weird? Because no one does that. Even Star Wars has big bad, you know.
That seems to be what one potential direction for a franchise that they've talked about, which would be cool.
Yeah, I want Indiana Jones. You know, new MacGuffin every time.
Yeah, and not even necessarily the same cast of characters, which has also been floated as a possibility. I'm reading, which would be great. Like, obviously, I would love to see more films with this cast, but also just totally new people on a different event. Like we get a peek of the Underdark, which is where all the drows are, and like popular Forgotten Realms characters like Driz, Durden. There's a bunch of cool shit they could do with the Underdark. There's just different, you know, and then there's other planes of existence. There's so many different areas of this universe where you could just tell, like, have your own, like, 4 or 5, I don't know, like you had a bunch of different franchises within this one franchise you could potentially do just about all these different areas. It's
100%. Yeah.
So I hope that's what happens. I don't know.
Yeah. I just hope they keep having fun. I hope they continue the weird chaos of it all too. Because again, like, you know what this feels like to me? It feels like why people like James Gunn and superheroes. Because James Gunn recognizes that superheroes are a volatile, like, idea where it's like they're all kind of maniacs, and like because their powers are so strong, like terrible shit can happen. And because they're doing this idea of like, you know, it feels like this. It really feels like they're rolling a die every time they do a task, and for that reason, there's this element of chaos that I love. I love the first plan they do when they're in jail, and this was also very good narratively, very good idea. So it starts with Chris Pine in jail, and he's explaining his background for parole, and he keeps like wondering where this one guy is, which turns out to be the bird person,
Jarnathan.
And you think Jonathan, yeah. And you think like, oh, he has a relationship with this guy, and he keeps stalling, but it's a very nice exposition to show how did he get to this point. So it works really well. And he tells this sob story about his wife dying and his kid being, basically when he went to jail, he lost his kid. And then finally Jonathan shows up, and you learn that they just want to grab him and jump out the window and use the bird person to fly out.
Yeah.
Which is the most D&D fucking thing ever. Like, that is perfect, because that's exactly the kind of bullshit that somebody would pull in a campaign and have to roll a die and get like a 16, and they'll be like, well, it pretty much worked. Like,
yeah, and the fact that as soon as they dive out the window, the parole board is like, but we granted you a pardon.
But we granted
like
you.
That's perfect. Like, perfectly drives that home, because invariably, as a person who's DM'd many sessions, the players will do something bugfuck crazy for absolutely no reason.
Yes. Yes. And it also sets up this character, Chris Pine, who we love. already I loved him after that first scene.
Right, yeah.
It helps that he's Chris Pine.
Of course.
Who, by the way, Chris Pine, like, the other thing is, Chris Pine kept being in the Smokin' Aces guys movies and Stretch and Smokin' Aces. Chris Pine can play like a lunatic, like a fun, like weirdo really well, and people don't let him do that. And it's really nice to see him kind of play. Again, he's not the hero in this. He's a scoundrel, right?
Yeah.
But he's also like, Michelle Rodriguez is basically the person who actually kicks ass for him.
Yeah.
While he's just like, he's like a slimy dude. They do the thing where they're like, what is your use? And he's like, well, I plan things. I'm a planner. And it's a great use of Chris Pine.
It is. I will push back a little bit. He is clearly the hero, and he's not.
Of course, he's the hero.
He's not.
I'm saying that they
slimy.
don't.
It's just like it's funny that they let him be kind of a buffoonish scoundrel.
Right. Yeah. He's It's again. It's D&D. It's everybody is this like variation of lawful and chaotic and evil, and it's very fun that they very clearly probably sat down and said like, okay, which one am I? Where do I rank here?
I know you can D&D released character sheets for each of these characters, so you can like actually download them and see what their alignment is.
That's perfect. And so like just all of this makes for like very fun fucking
it's
scenario.
fun. It's fun as hell.
D&D is kind of at its core like storytelling. It's a storytelling tactic, right? Like the alignment sheets.
It's about hanging out with your friends and coming up with a story together.
Yeah.
Like just playing it out as it happens. Like, and that's what it is. So
and I think there's a lot of leeway because of that in my head where it's like shit can be silly in this. Things can go really wrong. Things can go really right. And I think it's just that tone, that source material. It really works for that.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Like I said, it's at its core, it really is just a sandbox. It's the whole D&D exists to be a universe in which you can make up stories.
Yeah.
So it's perfect for an adaptation. Because you pretty much just do whatever you want. There's you don't have to have Iron Man in it. Like they're not sort of handcuffed by that where it's like, well, we have to have this character, this character, and this character if it's going to be a Dungeons and Dragons movie. There's no real like must-have character in any of the, there's popular characters, but it's never been Dungeons and Dragons has never been about that.
Right. If anything, the Iron Man of this is like seeing the creatures, right?
Yes.
It's like, ooh, there it is. Like that's the must-have. Is
right.
Like, oh yeah, we gotta have like a Dragonborn show up.
The Dragonborn guy at the parole board. I was pretty hyped for that. I was hyped for the gelatinous cube. I was hyped for the mimic. The mimic was cool.
Yes. Yeah, that shit. That's the shit that needs to be in here. Everything else is just like they can have a lot of fun, and so
that tubby
they can
dragon,
sort of,
Dave. That tubby dragon.
So good. That's such a good idea. It's just a dragon who clearly has eaten so many.
He's a tubby dragon. Like I think he's probably like a legendary creature from the game.
Right.
Like it is probably a character, quote unquote.
It's a great thing to fight because the dragon isn't that mobile. So like they can get away, but it is kind of also difficult. They were using portals, which is fun as well. That's another great tool to have for action.
Yeah.
It's just there's something about this, and it could get. I think they should reset characters. It really is like it comes down to, for me, with the thing that this has that Marvel is missing, and sort of is having more and more of a trouble with, is that like these characters just feel more vulnerable in general. So it just feels more like The Mummy or Indiana Jones, where it's more adventure. In a way where it's not just like, I'm a powerful person. Here's a more powerful person. Like, that gets very boring after a while, which is like, it's a new villain, and he's more powerful.
Yeah.
Because I'm also powerful, but they're more. And then we're going to shoot at each other. there's a lot more to work with here.
Right. There's like the
in terms of like the underdog side. Sorry.
Right. They're, for instance, just to illustrate what you were saying, there are these creatures that they find in the Underdark, and I forget what they were called, but they're these basically little brains that walk around
these
on two legs.
Dildos.
These little brain dildos. And they the paladin explains that they're drawn to like mind energy. So if you think, they'll come after you. And they feed exclusively on brains and devour your knowledge. Right. So it's like this interesting, it's just like there's a lot of room for stuff like that where it doesn't necessarily have to be like the bigger, badder version of Thanos. It's just challenging in a different, really not esoteric, really abstract way.
Right. What's stopping superhero movies from doing that?
Nothing.
Is there nothing in the source material? Because that's what it is. Like, to me, they were able to be more abstract with what they're doing. Where it's like with Marvel, their abstraction goes as far as this is a weird looking creature. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like they don't do anything that interesting.
Like the latest Ant-Man is a perfect example of this because like there is stuff like that in the source material. Like I think I probably I didn't cover Ant-Man with you. No. Kang is an interesting character because what makes Kang powerful is that he's a time traveler. So he'll just, like all the stuff that happens in like Bill and Ted, where they're like, oh, well, we know that if we get out of this, we'll come back and we'll leave a key here to get us out. And they look in the bushes and a key is there. Like Kang can do shit like that. And he can also... And they should have done more with that. Instead, it literally ends with a fist fight. It's like so you have this character that gives you a lot of conceptually cool things you can do, but it feels like Marvel is so beholden to this formula that it's not perfected, but like honed over a decade and a half of movies that like every movie has to end with them punches. Yes. Punch-em-ups. And it's, I don't know. I mean, and that's basically what this is. It still ends in a superhero fight, but it's like, it's way more interesting because everybody, I don't know. It's just they're
going
finding...
Going back to the early Ant-Mans where it's shrinking. Yeah. We're shrinking. We're fighting on this train, but it's a toy train. I make something really big all of a sudden, and it helps. Like they're playing a game there that's interesting.
Right.
As opposed to, the worst of Marvel, which is like, we're just going to pew-pew at each other.
Where it's just two CGI things punching each other. It's like, well, the spectacle of that wears out really fast. Like, so you need something more than that.
It's just so weird that they don't do it enough. Like Ant-Man, the new one, it's like, oh, this is our homes are alive. And it's like, that's cool. Is that going to matter? No? Okay.
Not at all.
Like stuff like that. Where it's like, there's some interesting concepts, but ultimately the writing just sort of feels like they're not going that extra mile, whereas what we're watching here is just they're having more fun with it. For example, they have to wake up corpses and ask them 5 questions, and they have fun with that in a way that's feels very James Gunn to me, which was like he asked one guy that basically they recount this battle, so each corpse keeps having their own flashback that ends up until when they die, and if they don't have the right information, they're like, okay, moving on. And then they're like, well, we're not going to leave them alive, are we? So they have to like, okay, what's your favorite color? What do you like, cats? Like they just ask them a few more questions, and they just keep in a very D&D fashion. They're not getting the information they need, so they basically just keep digging up bodies over and over again. And that's a fun use of that device, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what it is. Where it's like, yes, this character is just like, I have this device that lets me talk to dead people, and it's like, wow, that's convenient. But they do something fun with it that it doesn't matter,
And it has very it has very specific rules. Like it has its own limit. Like I like that all the magic has its limitations.
Yes, and they comment on that where they're like, "This seems arbitrary," which is like a little meta. They go a little meta here and there, but again, it's kind of needs to be.
Not in a way that bothers me. Like it
didn't bother me.
Because I mean that it like his response to that was like, yeah, she's like, well, why is it 5 questions? Like I don't know, that's just what it is.
Yeah, it's magic. Yeah, that's more meta about fantasy genre in general, I guess. The only thing that actually bothered me in this movie is the one shoehorned romance. Barely a Romance, where the guy's like, I
Right.
courted you, remember me? And she doesn't even remember him. And I thought that was great.
Him. That's a funny bit.
I wish they left it at that, because at the end he's like, can I court you again? And it's like, sure. And I'm like, we don't need that. Like, the biggest strength was the fact that Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez aren't romantically involved at all.
The movies, the emotional arc of the movie sort of hinges on that, where it's like he ends up bringing her back to, and he even makes like, this movie does the emotional stuff really well when it has, like when it's supposed to be there, it lets the stuff play. So he admits to his daughter, even though it's the evil sorceress in disguise as his daughter, but he still has this speech that he prepared to say to his daughter, where he's like, he admits that what he was doing was selfish. He's like, even though, like, I was going to go steal this stone of reawakening to bring your mom back to life, but the truth is I did this to bring my wife back to life, not your mother.
Yeah.
And that is sort of echoed in the ending, where Michelle Rodriguez dies, and he decides to burn the stone on her because he has this realization that she has raised this child with him. Like, she is this kid's mother.
That emotionally hit me, because
it did really hard, actually, because my mother just passed. So it was like, I was just in the right space for it, but I still think it was done very well.
I was not in that same space, and it hit me because, it's perfect. This is a perfect example of, it's all a cliche, but they're just doing it very well. So first of all, there's the efficiency of it.
Yeah.
Because Chris Pine's wife dies, and they're in the beginning. He's looking for this resurrection fucking tablet, and you know, like, watching this movie, I knew at the beginning, like, he's not going to use it to bring back his wife. Of course he's not. He is going to bring back someone else who died. Like, that's just, of course.
Right? He's going to have to make that choice.
Yeah, you know movies, you know that's going to happen. They do this thing where when she dies, he sees a dragonfly, and then you see a flashback where they were like trying to shoot a dragonfly. Yeah. And so, like, dragonfly equals like their love. Sure, very, again, efficient. When he's talking to the paladin's just like, oh, you're going to resurrect your wife. That's cool. Just so you know, like, death isn't the end. So you're going to be tearing her from whatever new life she has. And he's like, great, man. And it's a quick conversation, doesn't go anywhere, but what, basically they're planting a seed, which is like, maybe it's not good.
And he has that memory where the memory of him trying to catch the dragonfly ends with, it's not, it's not, it's out of context. Right. She just says, but you should just let it go.
Yeah. So they're planning all these little things that's most audiences, we don't need it spelled out.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, he shouldn't be doing this. Got it. And then, of course, he says that line, and he doesn't even say it to his daughter. He says it to someone else, but we hear it. And so then the sneaky part, the part that I wasn't thinking about, was Michelle Rodriguez and her relationship with his kid.
Right.
Where it's like, when she first sees them, she hugs her first.
Yeah.
She calls her Bug. They talk about, like, she, in his flashbacks, about how he was a bad father, and Michelle Rodriguez took pity because of the baby. And it's kind of like they focus on her relationship with Chris Pine more. And so that's what hits you. Right. Is like, when she actually dies, the girl is like crying over her. And then you get the flashbacks realizing, like, right.
Yeah.
That's her mother.
Yeah. That was really well done. It was almost like a misdirect, because the stuff with Chris Pine is so loud, and not in a bad way, but the stuff with Michelle Rodriguez and the kid is way more subtle.
Right, and again, you know this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I knew that, a fucking not Firefly, a dragonfly is going to show up at the end, right, to signify, no, don't bring me back, etc.
Let it go, yeah.
And so I knew all that was going to happen, but the execution of that, very good.
It was well done.
That really,
like we were saying, this movie's still doing all of the same things that a blockbuster does. It's just doing them well.
Yeah. It's just nice to see it done well.
Yeah.
And nice to see it done in ways that I would argue are more creative. Like, again, with the beginning
clever.
where he's explaining his background. That's a clever way to show exposition. Or, like, how do we get into this place? Oh, we'll do this. We'll do this elaborate heist. Or, like, how do we get out of this big, weird arena? And, like, they do clever things to get out of situations.
Yeah.
Where, like, they need to get out of the arena, so she's like, jump in the gelatinous cube, trust me, and they all jump in, and she transforms into a snake and
Right.
slithers through the mold of her body before it closes. Yeah.
She has one finger sticking out of the gelatinous cube, so it makes a clear path for her when she turns into a snake. It's really cool. It's really cool.
It's really cool. And that, to me, that is the essence of Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Yeah.
Is a combination of doing really clever things or really bold and stupid things that just happen to work. And if they keep that up, this will remain very fun to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a huge part of playing the game. Because you're very often in a situation where you're playing the game where, like, just kind of trying to fight, like, just die roll, fight your way out of certain situations. Just it either isn't possible or just it's just not going your way. So, like, you constantly, when you're playing, you're coming up with weird, outside of the box, fucking crazy ass things that the poor DM then has to struggle to reconcile.
Right. When they transfer the gold from the hot air to the hot air balloon,
Yeah.
those are little things where it's like we're having a lot of fun with a very basic idea. Like portals. Portals are in Marvel as well, right?
Yeah.
They're in X-Men. They're in these things, and they'll have fun with it, but sometimes they don't do enough. I was just watching that fucking Days of Future Past. They have a portal character, and they have a lot of fun with the portals. And it's just portal here, portal there, right? This is the same thing, I felt like, where it's like, okay, we have a portal wand. What do we do with it? Well, everything we possibly can think of.
Everything you can. Like the whole game of buying a cheap painting and putting a portal on it and sneaking it into a treasure cart so that it'll be put into the vault so they can get inside the vault. It was such a clever and fun game.
Yeah.
And they even do
and the carriage scene is really good.
Yeah, it is. That whole sequence is great.
Yeah, that's the kind of sequence where it's like in a worse movie they would pew it.
Right.
And like that's why this was really fun to watch.
Yeah. So it just to further illustrate the point that this movie it's just handled with a lot more care. But it's still doing the same thing. Is like at the end, the owlbear Doric does the Hulk Loki thing, does the same thing, turns into an owlbear and just slams the evil sorceress into the ground over and over and over again. But they still found a way to do that thing, which is even a thing that other blockbuster movies have done before in a funny way.
Yeah, that was straight up Avengers.
Yeah.
I flagged that of like, you just did Avengers, but I still enjoyed it. It was funny.
Right, because you wanted that to happen the whole time. You're just like, man, if she gets that owl bear on you, it's going to be lights out. And sure enough, it's lights out.
Yeah,
so
it was funny.
Yeah.
I rolled my eyes a little bit only because it was like straight up Avengers, but it was funny.
Yeah, it felt like
the audience liked it.
Yeah. It felt like kind of like a little wink and a nod because she does the Hulk thing and then they escalate it where she very frustratedly like slams her to the ground a couple more times and then throws her into a building.
Right.
And then rocks fall on her and she's dead. Yeah. I enjoyed it. I also liked they did kind of fun little weird meta jokes like that. Like when Justice Smith faces off against the sorceress, a basket blows across the street in between them. So it's like a tumbleweed.
They did a little Western thing. There was some weird instinct. I liked it.
The obvious other groups of adventurers that were in the maze with them.
Yes.
To the point that one of those groups was literally the characters from the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
Oh, that's great.
They were dressed like exactly like the characters from the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. But it was funny to see like them get released into this arena with like 4 other groups of people that are clearly other groups of adventurers.
Yeah, it's like Shaun of the Dead where they pass themselves.
Exactly, yeah. There's a lot of fun stuff like that in there too. It's just I don't know. I just had a lot of fun with this movie. It was just fun. I don't know. I keep saying that word.
It's refreshing. The word is refreshing for me because blockbusters have been kind of a bummer lately for me. They've been nonsense in a way that I don't like, or they've just been like overly serious, or they've been like that Adam Project where it's like this feels like they wanted to be everything.
That Adam Project is particularly tragic to me because there's a good movie in there. Like the emotional beats of that movie really hit, and then it's just like they had to Marvel the shit out of it, and you ruined it.
Right, and this has a little more Marvel than I'd like in it, but it definitely feels like it's calling its shot and it's saying like we're gonna be something else.
Yeah.
And that's what we really need right now.
Yeah.
Is something that actually says like, okay, this is our world. We're sticking to it. We're going to have fun in it. And it was fun. And like, yes, it was a little Marvel-y, but not that much. Like that Bradley Cooper scene is funny. And they're not like commenting on it. Or
right.
like
it's funny, but it's also one of the best scenes in the movie. Like it's well written, it's well acted, it's very emotional, and it drives home a pretty salient emotional point.
Right. And it's just, I don't know. It's a little meta, but even the meta stuff I liked. I liked when the Paladin's walking away and he's like, there he goes, just walking in a straight line.
Is he going to go
What's
around
he
the
do
rock?
when he gets to that rock?
Right over it. Right over it.
Or the thing that made me laugh the most was a visual gag, which was just when the Chris Pine like illusion of him starts breaking down.
Yeah.
The eyes bulge out in the most horrifying way possible. That was very funny. I enjoyed that. Yeah. So I don't know. This is a cliche formulaic movie of its time.
Yeah.
That's definitely trying to capture success of Marvel. I just think it does it well. It's the same way of like when a Marvel movie is good, where it's like, yeah, it's a Marvel movie, but they did a good job with it. That's kind of my thought here is like, it's not like this isn't a world-changing film. It's just a very good version of a PG-13 action adventure.
What it is it's a cheeseburger and fries. But it's a really good cheeseburger.
Yeah,
or Impossible Burger. That's what I eat.
Yeah,
but you guys know it. You guys understand. It's like it's candy, but it's really good candy.
Yeah, I feel like they understood the 5 minutes into this podcast, but like there was not that much to say about it. Oh, Hugh Grant, great villain.
I fucking love evil Hugh Grant. He's so great.
Evil Hugh Grant.
He's very funny.
I liked everybody. Again, it was a very good use.
It's a great cast. It's legitimately a great cast.
Michelle Rodriguez it's so funny that she's just been existing in films for
20 years,
now.
like over 20 years now.
And she's never a main character. She has to be stupid rich, right? Like, and she's just been like chugging along doing this thing that she's so good at. And I love seeing her in everything.
Yeah, she's great. She's great in this.
And she has her talents in all of these fucking, like the Fast and the Furious and like all of these goddamn series.
I did see this. You probably saw the quote circulating this week where she had given an interview where she said unequivocally that she's not coming back for Avatar, even if James Cameron tries to resurrect her character. She's like, no, that character needs to stay dead. That was the whole point.
That's very funny. Yeah. But she was in Avatar. She's I don't know. She's great.
Right. Because she also said, I mean, I've been dead and brought back to life a few times. I don't need to do it in Avatar.
Right. Yeah. She doesn't need Avatar. She was in Blood Rain. Like, that's all you need.
It's a huge film. Yeah.
Yeah. Huge film. She was in She Dies Tomorrow. I forgot about that.
She was, randomly in like one scene. But yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. That is
we love
cool.
her.
We do, yeah. I don't have anything else to say, Dave.
No, I haven't had much to say for a while.
Yeah,
I just enjoyed this stupid movie.
It's great. I'm gonna see it again, Dave.
Yeah, this is one I'm probably gonna see again. This is just I don't know. If you're a D&D fan, obviously you'll like it. If you're not a D&D fan, you'll probably still like it.
I think you'll probably still like it. Yeah.
Yeah, if you
as
want
long as you're
just...
not like super against fantasy.
Yeah. It's got
you're gonna be sitting there the whole time being like fucking nerds, just boiling over. Yeah, it's not the film for you,
right? But it's it's good fun. It's fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fun.
Oh, that's one more thing. One more thing I really liked, and it's very brief at the beginning. After they escape the prison, did you notice that they did? I think it's called tilt shift. They did the effect where they look kind of like miniatures in a big background, which is a D&D reference to the idea of miniatures on a map.
And the again, they didn't direct Game Night, but at least I don't think. But these writers, Game Night does the same thing, where it frequently does that to make the setting look like game pieces on a game board.
Right. It was a really good idea. And also just a very good intro of having them just in these exotic lands riding. I don't know. Good movie.
It's good.
Fun. A lot of fun.
Good.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah.
I want to tell you about our Patreon. Patreon.com/
Why are you doing it weird?
I don't know. Gamefully Unemployed. GAMEFULLY. Unemployed. You go on there. There's exclusive podcasts such as Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and Spiel Boys. We watch movies every Friday night with our patrons. And we have a Discord. Lots of fun. Sometimes we stream. We used to stream D&D. Boy, I want to play D&D now.
We sure did. We actually never finished that miniseries. There was like 1 or 2 episodes left. We'll have to do that one day. We also have a store. Head over to GameFullyUnemployed.com where we have a link to our Teespring store. We can get all kinds of cool original artwork and designs on t-shirts, mugs, stickers, posters, all sorts of things. So slap your pudgy dragon peepers onto that.
I miss fucking Robert DM. That was...
Oh, his gnarly ass world. Yeah. Oof.
Yeah. Robert Evans was our DM for a while, folks.
Long time.
You can just imagine what that would be like.
You know.
It was dark.
The answer is dark. A whole universe he had created within Pathfinder rules.
Yeah, I completed my character's arc because I killed the one-nippled orc that...
That's true, yeah.
That got away early on.
You bowling balled a lot of people.
I did. The orc... I'm sorry, folks. The orc...
made puppets out of a lot of people.
It was one of the last things I did in that campaign. I chose to dive into his mouth, and I rolled a perfect 20.
You sure did, Dave.
So I did. I dove into his mouth and split him in half with my body.
Yeah.
That was the best thing I've ever done in my life.